AI can be an amazing tool. So I'm not saying if your consultant's using AI, you should run for the hills. And if you don't think the court system is getting wise to AI, you're absolutely crazy. AI, thumbs up. Used improperly, thumbs down. What's going on, guys? RDAP Dan, Federal Prison Time Consulting. We've got a pretty special video here for you today. Top 3 things that you should probably know before preparing to go into prison. The personal narrative is going to be the letter that you create that's going to go to your sentencing judge. So when you talk about crafting your personal narrative, one of the biggest misconceptions that we'll talk about first is many defendants either receive really poor, ill advice, or they're going from a practical mindset, which kind of starts to put you through this, I hate to say it, but victim mentality, where you start putting into your letter all of the good things that you've done, that you're a really good person, that you don't deserve to go to prison, how hard this is going to be on your kids and your family. A lot of victim mentality where you're trying to use circumstances around you to shield the type of sentence that you could be receiving, thinking that you're going to connect with the judge on some kind of an emotional level that is going to give you a better sentence purely because you're pleading this mercy game. The judge has seen this letter before. In fact, it's probably the only letter the judge has ever seen when it comes from, your first time nonviolent offenders, because your mindset goes into this fight or flight where you think you have to appeal to the judge on why you shouldn't deserve to go to prison. And you start to focus some of this on how hard it's going to be on your family if you're taken away. Like you should be excused of your punishment because this is going to be really hard on your family. Well, the reality is everybody in your situation, at least a large, vast majority of them, they're all in a similar situation. They're all remorseful, but they're all saying the same thing. They're begging for a direction for the judge to go, thinking that the judge is going to feel sympathy for your family, that they're going to have some kind of empathy for you. And they've sentenced 1 million people just like you and before you for very similar crimes, charges, scenarios that you might be in. And usually you'll see within the guideline range, especially when you're taking like a plea deal. So to get yourself beyond these guidelines, to have the judge consider downward departing, specifically when there's no minimum mandatory involved, really, what are you doing in your narrative and throughout this whole mitigating process that the average person's not doing? That's one of the things that having a prison consultant can definitely hype on by taking away some of these common mistakes that end up causing you a longer sentence or aggravating the court where everything you've just done becomes a complete waste of time. You could do all of the right things and one wrong thing at sentencing, and it really could be the last thing the judge hears, and it could negate all of the good and just kind of get you a really poor outcome with very non-desirable circumstances. You need to understand who the audience is that you're crafting this to. So it's not about manipulating the system. It's about removing anything that's not needed and really getting you to focus on strong morals, accountability, where your thinking went wrong. And one of the big things is identifying your victims, not just if it was a money crime, or if the government lost money, or if a medical agency lost money, or even if an individual lost money. You definitely want to identify all of the victims, including them, but you want to identify victims that are a little less seen. Your wife, your husband, your kids, your direct family members. These people are 100% victims of the mistakes that you made. Doesn't make you a bad person, but it does help you take some accountability when you realize that your poor decisions, if you're trying to say earlier on, prepping for your narrative that you did this for your family, or, you had to find a way to pay your bills, and now you're potentially taking yourself away from your family going to prison, it's really a hard sale to give the judge where you're pleading guilty 100% to whatever narrative the government's come up with. And at the same time, you're trying to say that you're this, Robin Hood that was only doing it due to tough times. That could be a lot of the reality, but you have to stay focused on the plea agreement that you signed, that you're pleading guilty to when you did that change of plea. So your narrative really needs to match with this. And sometimes it's tough to dig deep and talk about the mistakes that you did make, owning where you did go wrong, talking about where you did maybe make a lot of unethical choices, where you did cheat the system, where you did lie, and how ultimately you were willing to put your family and your friends into a risky position where now you might be losing your home, your family's losing their financial ability that you're no longer going to bring in. So being able to identify these things that you did, this can really show the judge something different from what they're not used to seeing. And if the judge truly believes that you are being accountable for the mistakes that you made and that you are taking the responsibility by understanding the consequences of your actions, this is where you start to see a judge look at somebody and go, okay, maybe they don't need as much time as I was planning on giving them. Maybe we can depart from the guidelines. Maybe we can do something like home confinement, halfway house, a shorter prison sentence, a combination of those three things. That's kind of the goal here, right? Is not just to receive the best sentence possible, but to make sure that you really understand the situation that you put yourself and your family in, so that if you do get to stay out of prison or you do serve a shorter sentence, you're likely going to get out and stay out. So a way that we help with this process when it specifically comes to the narrative, we would work with you, go over a set of questions, interview questions, and then based on your answers, we would actually help you craft the narrative in a way that we think is going to yield the best decision from the court. The personal narrative plays a big role into the pre-sentence report, which we kind of jump into next, right? You've taken your plea deal. Really, the next thing before sentencing is going to be the pre-sentence interview. This is probably, if you're going to take anything away from this video, this is probably the single most important thing that you'll do at the entire process. And I hate to say it, 90% or more of our clients and defendants are not prepared for the pre-sentence interview. In many cases, their attorney's not even present. We have a client right now, actually, not only was his attorney not present, he wasn't prepared or really told how important the pre-sentence interview was at all. And a matter of fact, he did it over the phone or Zoom in his garage by himself. And you're already in fear. You're already dealing with probably the most dire situation of your entire life. The pre-sentence report is going to dictate things like what programs you can qualify for, specifically when it comes to things like RDAP, the Residential Drug Abuse Program, extra halfway house, preparing for what prison you might want to go to, asking for the proper recommendation, your personal narrative, which your attorney will probably never mention and might even tell you that you don't need to do this or you shouldn't do this, but having the personal narrative prepared well before the pre-sentence interview and actually submitting it to the U.S. probation officer that's going to be conducting the report can have huge advantages to receiving the best sentence possible and placing you into programs that can reduce your sentence on the back end. So potentially helping you receive a shorter sentence up front, and then whatever sentence that judge does impose, that can also be further reduced by you knowing what programs to potentially position yourself for. Now, does this guarantee you're going to get into programs? No, of course not, but it's 100% going to increase the likelihood of you being accepted into these programs. If you really remember and you look at your own situation, many of you, from the time you got indicted to the time you actually pled guilty, could be months and months, even years have gone by. Now, after all this time has gone by, you're going to sit down with the probation officer and they're going to dig through your entire life. They're going to ask you tons of yes and no questions. You're going to go into this interview, which is anywhere from 30 minutes to that's a very short interview, to about an hour and a half, which is about a typical interview process. The problem is you have no idea what they're going to ask you. You might have a rough idea, but what you don't know is the government's going to be submitting their own version of what a horrible person you are. The pre-sentence interview is really your opportunity to offset some of the information that the government's going to present about you. One of the best ways you can do that is submit your personal narrative at this point. It does a couple things. It's going to give the probation officer a much wider scope of who you are. And I would say 90% of the time, the probation officer will actually copy and paste or just upload the entire personal narrative right to your pre-sentence interview. Later on at sentencing, about 2 weeks prior to sentencing is usually when your attorney is going to do your sentencing memo when they submit this information to the court, where it's going to have your sentencing memorandum, which usually includes like your personal narrative. It's going to include character reference letters, some other basic information, hopefully to offset the terabytes of information that the government has proposed. So having your narrative added to the pre-sentence report, it does a couple things. In addition to maybe giving you a better recommendation from the court, or giving you a better recommendation from probation, it's going to almost guarantee that the judge is going to read your personal narrative. Now, we like to believe that the judge reads everything submitted, especially when it comes to narratives and reference letters. But the reality is judges are human. We don't know if they're actually reading everything, especially when you've got somebody submitting, this over-glorified victim mentality personal narrative that the judge has seen a million times. He starts to scan through and go, yep, I've seen this before. Or you got somebody just submitting, 500 character reference letters from their best friend who was an attorney, their sheriff friend, their lawyer friend, their pastor, their employer. So now you've got kind of a poorly written personal narrative, which looks like everybody else's, and you've got 30, 40 letters written by friends and family 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4 weeks before sentencing, and you think the judge is actually going to read all of that. Okay, they say they do, but really, do you know? The one thing we know they do read is the pre-sentence report, because a lot of their sentencing, their guidelines that they're opposing, they have to know what your guidelines are. So they really got to go through the pre-sentence report. That's probably one of the few documents that we know for sure that they're going to read. So if your personal narrative has been submitted into the pre-sentence report, you're almost guaranteeing they're going to read that thing. And that, again, can increase the likelihood of receiving a better upfront sentence. So, matter of fact, we have videos of judges talking about they've really never seen defendants do this, and they wish defendants did this more because it gives them a much clearer picture and shows that the defendant didn't wait until 2 to 3 weeks before sentencing to prepare the narrative in the reference letters. So using a service to help you prepare these letters, if it's being done the right way, can have a huge impact. A lot of the letters that we read lately, not just from defendants, but also letters that have been prepared by other prison consultants and some of the bigger prison consultants in the industry, it's Chat GPT, right? AI. Everybody's using it. You shouldn't be against it, but you should be cautious. You get somebody that kind of rushes through a narrative, they get some basic information from you, plug it into AI and say, write me a narrative. Problem is, a lot of the formatting, a lot of the wording, a lot of the punctuation that they use, it looks all of the same, and it almost sounds a little AI. It doesn't have that zest or your personal touch to it. So can AI be an advantage in crafting a narrative? Absolutely. So if you're using a consultant or a professional writer that has the mindset of where your mindset currently is, understands the process, really knows what the court is looking for, and can help you tap into that register in your brain that can start to really go down the rabbit hole that's going to make sense. AI can be an amazing tool. So I'm not saying if your consultant's using AI, you should run for the hills, but I am saying that if it looks like every other AI letter that's been written, and maybe you have no idea, part of our free consultation, go ahead and send us your information. We can tell you if not only if it was written by AI, but how much effort went into it. And if you don't think the court system is getting wise to AI, you're absolutely crazy, because imagine all the people that are using AI now without really knowing how to use it. So they're spitting out some basic information. Whatever you're asking AI to do, the output you're getting back is only going to be as good as the input. AI, thumbs up. Used improperly, thumbs down. We have a lot of clients right now that are receiving somewhat shorter sentences, 24 to like 30 something months, maybe early 40 months. And they look at their numbers on how much time they're going to serve, and you start doing the calculations on good time, RDAP, FSA credits, potential halfway house and home confinement, and they look at it and go, oh, I don't even need to do RDAP. I can get just as much time off without doing the program, just through the First Step Act. What many people don't realize is there's waiting lists pretty much for everything when it comes to the BOP. Waiting list for RDAP, waiting list for the First Step Act. But the difference is RDAP is more of a release date based program, meaning that you can only do RDAP. If you're sentenced to 24 months, that's like the minimum amount of time you can be sentenced to potentially qualify for RDAP. Now, if you're sentenced to 24 months and you have all the criteria in your pre-sentence report, typically that gives you almost a guaranteed qualification based on program needs. But now, do you have enough time to take the program? So remember, RDAP, qualifying for RDAP is not for time-wise, it's not based on your sentence, so to speak. It's based on how much time you have remaining on your sentence when you get into the program. RDAP doesn't start every day within the BOP. In some prisons, it starts every couple of weeks. It starts every couple of months. There could be pushbacks due to weather, short staff, typical political venues, COVID. These things can cause hiccups in all of the systems throughout RDAP, First Step Act, everything. So knowing this and being well aware of this can help you make not just better decisions, but prepare for A or B opportunities. So obviously, it'd be great to get all this time off without doing RDAP, because you don't have to take the program. You don't need to stress yourself about it unless you need that help. Then it's definitely worth it. But in other situations, in other circumstances, if you're sentenced to 24 months, but it takes you a month and a half, 2 months to get into the program for whatever reasons, now you're underneath the qualifications and you no longer qualify for RDAP. Let's say you're sentenced to 37 months, which is the minimum requirement to be sentenced to in order to receive the full 12 months off for RDAP. And again, it might take you 2 to 3 months to get in the program. So now you can still take the program, but instead of getting a year off, you might only get 6 months or 9 months off. You're either going to typically get 6, 9, or 12. And the way that's kind of determined, if you just want to go off of sentencing purposes for your own mind frame, is 24 to 30 months. That would typically get you 6 months off for taking the program. 31 to 36 months will get you 9 months off, and 37 plus will get you 12 months and up. So it's very important to what you're sentenced to. If you're sentenced to 24 months, you've really got some other things to think about. Now you've got the time that you're sentenced to, you've got the programs that you potentially qualify for, you've got the information in your pre-sentence report, but when does the next program start? You probably don't even know where you're going at this point. Maybe you just got sentenced yesterday and the judge is giving you 30, 60, 90 days to get your affairs in order, to self-surrender. One of the reasons they also give you self-surrender is not just to get your affairs in order, it's also to give the BOP time to figure out where they're going to designate you to. And that can take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks after sentencing just to find out where you're going to go. So now let's say you found out where you're going to go. You look up the prison or you contact the prison and they don't want to tell you anything. So you're kind of freaking out and you don't really know what to do. And finally you get a hold of somebody, or maybe there's an inmate already at the prison that's giving you a list of the next starting classes, and you find out your self-surrender day, let's say, is, July 1st, but the next RDAP class is starting, let's say, May 28th, or June 28th, which is a few days before. You're going to get there. The class already started. Maybe the next class is going to start till August 1st. So now you got a whole minimum of 30 days before you can even get into the program, potentially, which is going to put you under that threshold. So in a situation like this, holding your attorney accountable and understanding what you need to do, you'd actually have a self-surrender motion extension created where you're going back to the court. You're asking the judge to adjust your self-surrender date, which is very typical. They're approved majority of the time if there's a good reason, where you're asking the judge to make a consideration and change your self-surrender date based on specific reasonings. It could be programming needs like RDAP when the start date is and you're not going to qualify, you're not going to get the help that you need because of your start date. It could be due to medical reasons for your children. Lots of different reasons you can use to create a self-surrender extension within reason. Asking for an extra 30, 60, 90 days. It's very common, guys. Your attorney might tell you, nope, the judge doesn't do that, or your judge never does that. If I had a nickel for every time somebody told me their attorney said they can't do it, it's either coming from a lazy perspective or a perspective where they've never done it before and they don't want to tell the client the wrong thing. So they just tell the client, no, it can't be done. Or they just don't want to do it because they figured they're already done with your case. They moved on. Your file's already hit the shredder. This is something where, again, a prison consultant can really help you hold the attorney accountable. In many cases, we actually draft the motion for the attorney. And in other cases, we actually have to get on the phone with the attorney and explain to them that this 100% can be done. And let's jump to a scenario where the judge says no. Okay, so what? Absolute worst case scenario is you're in the same situation you were already in. Now, talking about things you can do while you're in prison, in addition to RDAP, in addition to position yourself for the best possible outcome, creating a track record of what you're doing in prison is huge. So really preparing for your release. We're going to talk about the release plan in a second because that's also huge and big misconceptions that come along with that. But we're talking about like your progress report. What classes are you in? What classes have you completed? What classes are you waiting in? What are you doing? Unit-based programs? How are you volunteering your extra time in prison? There's lots of things you can do in addition to working, and in addition to your basic programming, you can also do in-unit programs that are maybe not going to give you time off, but your unit manager, your case manager, a lot of times they're going to be the ones that are going to put you in for extra halfway house time or suggest or make a recommendation for extra halfway house time. And if you're doing the bare minimum or you're doing what everybody else is doing in prison, sure, you're staying out of trouble. You're not getting into any more problems, but you're not doing anything above and beyond. You're not sticking out to them. Maybe helping other inmates study for GED classes. If you've got maybe real estate background, credit background, purchasing cars background, any type of business degree, you can actually hold these little workshops that you don't get credit for, but your unit team, your case manager, other inmates see you doing this. And if you don't think that could play a role down the road when you're asking for the BOP to consider you for additional benefits like halfway house, these are things that 100% can be considered, specifically if it's been documented the right way. So you want to have all of this documented through your entire journey. You don't want to go in on day one and sit with your case manager and go, what can I do to get extra halfway house time? That's what everybody's asking them, and they're going to shoot that down quicker than you can get the words out of your mouth. This directly ties into the release plan. The biggest problem we're seeing with release plans, honestly, is coming from other prison consultants right now, which baffles me and blows my mind. And when I say AI generated, I'm talking like you've got people creating these things with no real important input going into them at all. It's asking, you're having very basic reports generated on release plans. If you think of a release plan, what it's designed for, it's to help you get as much halfway house time, home confinement, FSA credits as possible. You do need to do a release plan, but what you don't want to do is walk into prison on day one with this glorified, well-articulated, this release plan that looks like it was so much work that went into it, where you know all of the buzzwords. You're talking about residential drug abuse program. You're talking about the importance of the pattern score, how you did all this research on the BOP, and you understand how important the release plan is. Too much. Going in with a release plan, it's not going to hurt you to have it there with you on day one, but I tell all of our clients, there's no sense in having it day one. You want to go into the BOP with an open mind. You want to listen to what your case manager has to say. They might like things done a certain way. You walking in with this documentation, they might look at it and go, yeah, that's great. We're not going to use it. And now you've already set this kind of tone, right? So think about what halfway house and home confinement, who it's really designed for. For somebody that has their life completely in order, they've got a house, they've got a career, they've got a business, they've got everything that everybody could ever want waiting for them on day one. There's not really going to be any struggles. Financial things are taken care of. Your living situation is taken care of. You've got a car, you've got a perfect relationship. Do you need extra halfway house time? Probably not. Extra halfway house time, and halfway house time in general, is developed and designed for somebody that is maybe serving a lengthy sentence, that doesn't have a stable place to go, doesn't have a stable job waiting for them, doesn't have, a bank account with finances in it when they're going to get out of prison. These are the types of people that are more likely to go back to a life of crime, because the struggle is so real, especially in 2025. The struggle is more real than it's ever been, that people need to start making money right away. So giving this person halfway house time or more halfway house time gives them a place to live with still some accountability, with some oversight, giving them time to find a job, giving them time to find a house so they don't go directly from hot to cold, giving them that build-up time. When you've got somebody that doesn't need any of that and they bring this bulletproof release plan, in our experience and what we've seen, this is the person that ends up getting less halfway house time, or getting a browbeating from the case manager, because now it looks like you've probably hired a prison consultant, especially when your release plan looks like every other release plan that they've seen. It's bullet pointed, it's got formatting in there, it's got all the subtitles, looks like they pulled it directly off the BOP's website. We work directly with our clients on creating a very articulated, reasonable release plan that sometimes is a work in progress, where we kind of come up with a skeleton. We work on it as you're going. Your case manager might tell you some things they want you to work on. Well, we start building that into your release plan. So by the time you submit your release plan, it's actually going to go into suit and into line with what you've been working on. And it's going to be much more likely to create the incentivized process that's going to offer you more halfway house time or more home confinement on the back end. A lot of times, doing things such as working with your congressional representatives on wherever you're going to be releasing to, whatever city, town, state you're going to release to, if it's going to be going back with your wife, with your family, with your mother, with your husband. We work directly with your point of contact, with your mom, with your wife, with your husband, whoever's on the outside. We create hardship as to why they would benefit having you home sooner. Maybe they need help with the kids. Maybe they need help with financial. Maybe they need help with medical bills. Maybe they need help just getting around the house because they're disabled. Showing that need from their perspective to your congressional representative, and having your congressional representative make that request on their behalf to the BOP, saying, hey, BOP, we're requesting that you consider Dan for additional halfway house time because his wife, she's the one that's really struggling through this. He's showed that he's done what he's supposed to do in prison. He's highlighted all of the programming. He's got an amazing progress report. He's got a pretty good release plan. The sooner we get him to a halfway house, the sooner he can start producing and building for his family. And all the meanwhile, you're not asking them to do anything they can't do. You're still serving your same sentence. Whether you're in prison, whether you're in the halfway house, or whether you're on home confinement, you're still serving your sentence to the BOP. The judge has nothing to do with this. This is all done at the Bureau of Prisons level. So you've got your jurisdiction of the courts, and then you've got your jurisdiction of the BOP. This is why the judge is very limited to what he can do when it comes to designation, what you can do while you're in prison, how much halfway house time you're going to get on the back end, how much home confinement you're going to get on the back end. That's all done at the BOP's level. So knowing your checks and balances are what going to separate you from the rest of the path. There's a link in this video for a free consultation. I highly suggest you do that free 15-minute call. It could lead into bigger and better things for both of us. It could lead you into becoming a client. It could lead into us doing some document review, case review on your actual documents. But at the very least, that 15-minute phone call where you can ask as many questions as you want, and we'll do our best to give you answers. It really could be the difference between serving a lengthier sentence. It could be the difference of getting into programs. It could also be the difference of where you're going to serve your sentence. Click on the link in the consultation. My name's Dan Wise, Federal Prison Time Consulting. People helping people, communities method, one day at a time, guys. See you guys next time. Peace.